So July 2nd, we have a festival in Chinatown. It's one of the, they just started redoing them after the pandemic, so we got invited to do it. We're going to have a table down there. It's at 11, Maria will be down there doing the scholarship thing. Then at 1:30, we have a slot to do a performance, and it's from 1:30 to maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So what we've done is I've already notified the kids, all the kids, that we're having this event. There's an optional sign up there, and then from that group that signs up, I'll pick the ones that I think can perform. The rest can go down and watch and just see what it's like if they're interested in going. And then we'll probably have some adults that would be interested in performing. And then the back of that sheet is to let us know if you're able to go, because it's July 4th weekend. And then from that, that list, we'll see, what we can do as a series of group forms if we have enough time. So that's the option. You use that list to fill out, just to let us know that you're going to attend, and then we'll flip it over, and then we'll see what we can do. And we'll put the groups together, and you can rehearse, and then, and we'll plan for it. But it's the only way to do it. Otherwise, with the kids, not all the kids are ready to perform. And we don't want to just grab a bunch of kids and say, we're going to do this performance, because it will be a disaster. So just keep it in mind, July 2nd. Look at your calendar. You may be away, and that won't work for you. But it's something to think about. Yeah. What?
So on the same day is also the...
That's a wedding. But that's a wedding, yeah. That's a wedding. So that's different, yeah. It is the same day.
Yeah, so maybe craft a plan for going right straight from there, maybe?
That's logistics for the Lion people. The performance for this is completely separate. So we can plan for that. It'll be too early to go right from there, but we can plan to have the people and the equipment there. Yeah, Springfest. You go to at 1:30 and do the performance. You're done by 2. The wedding is what, 5 or 6? 7. Yeah. So. Yeah, but that's at 7, so that's too big a gap too.
So is there a table at all to hang out, or not?
There's a table, but even that would end at 3:30, 4 o'clock. Yeah.
But what time's the thing?
7.
Oh, 7.
Tentative to be later as
Yeah.
we get closer.
Yeah, because Chinatown is, once it's done, it's done. Then we have to figure out what else we can do.
Just thinking it can be because you have everything down there, just be from there.
Well, that's up to us, because that's completely separate from that. Yeah. We have a, we could just have everything loaded up and go, and then we can leave from wherever we leave from, because not everybody wants to stick around for 5 hours.
Open house, or we'll only talk about it later?
Yeah, let's talk about later. But last year we didn't. Yeah, we haven't even thought about it.
I'll talk to you.
Okay. All right. So you can go. Yeah. You were working on the cornerback fist. Yeah. Okay. Do fu hawk, and then you guys did some double swords last time, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do fu hawk, and maybe 5 images just for the sequential side of it. Okay, ready? Okay. Hup. So try to pull. Well, when you do this, try not to just have the hand here. Put it into a position so that the 2 sides work together. Hey, Steven, nice glasses. Okay, deep breathing. So one thing about, either Tai Chi or Kung Fu, we always have to connect the two sides. So when we do any of these movements, if this hand is not quite there, then it's not really part of the integral part of the movement. When we do movements and we don't finish the movement, then our system doesn't recognize what it's supposed to be doing. So the fact that when we're here and we learned to punch in the beginning, and we actually went over some of this in the earlier class, when you punch, it's really a drawback and an extension, a drawback extension. It's tied through your torso. If you don't tie it through your torso, then you never find your center line. So it was, I just use an example of when these guys made these robots, and they made them so that they were learning how to punch. So they would just go out there and they try to knock each other's block off, right? So they go out there and they're hitting the buttons and it's going boom, 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 and nothing's happening. Because they didn't know that your punch has to come to the center. And they didn't know they had the center, so they had to add another motor to make the body twist. So once they realized that you could turn and twist, what happens when you twist? Well, first, this is the same. But the thing is, if you're just doing this, you're not actually doing anything. It's not till you turn. Now, but when you turn, the length of your fist, when you turn the body, elongates by this much, because this is where the center is. So when you turn and you turn, there's where the action is that actually knocked the other robot over. But when we use the techniques and we're like this, we don't just look at the extension. Everybody focus on the strike. When you draw back, that's your defensive motion. But the defensive motion, not just to defend, because when my hand is here and he punches on this side, say, when I go like this, it also creates an action. It gives me a connection to the two sides. Now for every action, if I punch to his head, where do I expose myself? Here, right? If I punch low, I expose myself here, right? If I punch here, I'm exposed here and here. So most of your forms, what do? There's a filling of that void. So if he throws a punch and I go like this, then I'm exposed here and here. So my hand has to go up or down. If he throws a punch on this side and I go like this, I'm exposed here. So if I come up like this, I have to fill this bottom. If I go like this, I have to bring this up, right? If I go like this, this goes down. If I turn this way and this way, this has to, because it's even, it has to be like that. Now, if you're practicing, the key to that is your torso. If you don't turn your torso, then you don't have a connection to the two. So when you're doing these movements, like even Lawrence, when you do your movements, don't just quicken the hands. Because if you, no matter how fast your hands go when you do this movement, it doesn't tie to your body. So you have to tie everything to your body first. And then the speed will come from your action. You know, like I see sometimes there's, Lawrence, do this. Do that movement. Do it the way you normally do it in the form.
Was that almost right?
So you try to do this one really fast. Do it again. No, the way you normally do it. Okay. Okay. So don't just do that. You want to connect it to, because if you do this, then it becomes isolated because your consciousness only went to the hand. You have to get it from the body. When you get to learning the stick, not even the single weapons, when you learn the stick, that's the real connection to body. Because you can't move one end without moving the other end, because you're tied together. So when you do your stick forms, you really want to understand how the body mechanics starts to tie in, and they're inseparable. Your hands are inseparable once you have the stick in your hand. So that actually is a good training for why the hands, the two sides work together. Now, that's inseparable right and left up here, upper appendages. The lower half is the lower half. They have to be inseparable. They're inseparable because you go to leaning and back and leaning, you turn and you turn. They're inseparable because it's tied through your hip. So if you have this piece that's in here that's not connecting this to this and that to this, then you don't have what we call the upper-lower coordination. So that's critical in getting, a certain level of skill where your body has to integrate.
So I'm just curious, are you rounding the shoulder, the back of the shoulder?
Yeah, so we go like this. That's going to hoop position. That's expanding, right? When you turn, that expansion is horizontal, right to left. When you go forward and back, that's that direction. When you go up and down, lifting and sinking, that's up and down. So it's forward, right, left, and center. That's standard, XYZ axis. It's always, so if you have XYZ axis, it means it has volume. It's like a ball. So when we move, you have to create that space. Otherwise, it doesn't have the look. Now, if you do it fast, it's only going to be one-dimensional. You need to have more than one dimension in your movements. So when we start off, let's just do the first couple of movements in Fuhak. We start off, first thing when you get the position, you have to open your chest, close your back. And then when you go like this, this is one dimension, this is flat, right? But this is also only one-sided. When you turn your body and then drive it into the center position, you actually will create an action from here. And then from here, you have to bring it from this side to this side. So it comes across 45 and then turn. And then here, it goes back to 45 and it cuts down on the 45 line and turns here. Now when this comes up, it has to go up to this point and then push to this side and then goes across. Those are all directional movements.
I just want to make sure I repeat that. So from here, cut this way, and then turn
Yeah. Well,
That's a refinement that is new to me. Because unfortunately, I've been doing it like that
uh-huh.
instead of here and then over.
Yeah, so I'm just defining the direction. Because if my hand is here and I turn it like this, then it becomes one-dimensional. If I'm here, it's slanting down and I can sink my elbow. I can sink my elbow like this, but it goes out. So if you're turning like this, then you can't track it. The same as when I'm like this. Yeah. This, huh? Yeah. But see, this is done slowly. So when you do the movement, the reality is, it's like this. It's like this, right? This is turning like this.
Yeah.
Now when I go like this,
Yeah.
I created just like in a butterfly palm.
Yeah.
Your arm is not just this. It's actually this.
Right.
Then I have to reset my torso if my torso and my hand movement goes together. If I'm like this, here's my 45 line. That's cutting hand. If it's on this side, then it has to come across still descending like this.
Okay.
So if I come to here and then my body is here, then I have to turn back to here, right? So I could turn back to here. You say, well, it's going over there. But I turn my body so it's over there. And then I open back like this. So what you have to learn is to move your torso. You're moving your torso, but you're not turning it. You're not turning it in your lower back. Yeah. See, because the 45 line and the 45 line is this, right? That's your oblique. Right? So if I'm here, it has to follow that line. The track. If I'm here, then I cut. So cutting hand, I could do this. This is only here, right? But once the hand is here, right? That's cutting, right? But we want to fill this space. I want to fill this. I want to fill this space. So you have to cross your body.
So the first one was flat.
Yeah.
And when you did it this way, this was more.
Yeah. So when you learn cross hands, right? What are you learning? You're learning a center line. You don't use both hands like this all the time. You throw a punch here. Right? There's oblique, right? Or you throw it here. You throw it here. So that's your center line. So if I use one hand, you throw a punch, right? There's just like Zhenjiang, right? But you actually stop here. Then you turn to here. So your line of interception has to be in the 45 or in the 45. Because this would be one-dimensional. You throw a punch, right?
Yeah.
It's one dimension.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same action as if I do this. This is just slanted. This is just your triangular force. So this is flat. So it's intercept at 90 degrees. So you're meeting. It's efficient. It has the most strength. Actually, force on force is this 90. This 90 is crossing it, but it's not the most efficient because it just takes it laterally like this. So if I want to have it come across now, it has deflection. Even if you push into it, it means a triangular position. But in the triangular position, I sink. Right? So if I'm in a 45-degree line and I sink, then I turn, then I took the movement from here. It becomes a round movement. Because everything is, our skeleton only creates angular positions. The angular positions, when you take out the corners. So the yielding between here, here, and here is created by how the torso. So up and down, right and left. This is right, down, left. That's your body form. So when we do our forms, down, up, turn, cut, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we draw. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So when you push, okay, do this. Everybody do this. Everybody do this push. Right. So you have to tie this shoulder, because when, like a dragon cloth, this turns like this. Right? So when we do this, and we're turning here, right? In the spine. Right? Yeah, do it, yeah. Yeah.
From underneath, right?
So when you push, if you want to connect this side to this, it's not this, it's this. You're gone. Right? So if you put your hand here, right, just feel it. Right?
Forward. Yeah. It
See?
moves.
So I'm turning, but it's not only because I'm turning like this, because I would lose my center.
Ah.
Right.
Yeah, it moves opposite direction.
Yeah.
This moves opposite to that hand.
Yeah. Right. So this is turning, right? You put your hand here, right? This is just turning. This is. See? Yeah, right? So there's a connection between this and this. So it's not, it's this, then this works, then this, and this are all pieces of the whole. So as you progress in your movement, then the control factor becomes, how do you move your body? How do you move your body? So when you're here, these are in pairs. When you thrust out and you sink, or you thrust out and sink, this has to be parallel to the floor. When you're here, right, after you push and you elbow up, here, thrust. 1, 2, 3, turn. So your torso is expanding, contracting, opening, and closing. Because your hands are expanding, your arm is expanding, and contracting. So it's moving out, it's moving in. Open and close, open and close, open and close. Expand and contract. So it's a total body movement. So that's what you build, in movement, but it actually happens up here. So there's an article there that's from Consumers Report, and it talks about Alzheimer's, brain, and all this stuff, and it tells you the nutrients. It's just touch on it basically to let people know that it's critical to maintain brain health because of Alzheimer and neurological diseases as you age. Then it talks exercise. And then it says yoga and Tai Chi. So in Tai Chi, it has about 4 lines on it. And the reason why they only have 4 lines on it is not because they don't understand why. They don't really understand it. So they just say meditation is important for relaxing and taking out stress, because stress and those two things combined together cause a lot of information in the brain that's not good for, for brain health. But how does that all work? It works from the movement and the neurological connections from the motor neurons and the neurons that are in the brain that are tied to your body. And because you're relearning and re-associating movement and the intent of it, your brain is actually always working. It's more critical than thinking, because thinking is just taking ideas. When it comes to movement, you're actually working your whole body, whole system. It's actually much different than anything else. So when we move our body, the sequential memory, the muscle memory, all the stuff that we talk about is pretty deep in the science, but the scientists don't even realize that this is what's happening into the body. So how we breathe, the little things, those are really refinement of a motor skill. And motor skill is something that we only have as much understanding as the body can do. So if it doesn't do it, it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist up here. If it doesn't exist up here, then you never can find it unless you actually bring in the information. So this is what you use to bring in information, and that information and then is processed and then is sent through the body. What the body does is send back the information. There's a constant back and forth response to telling you whether it's correct or not. So that's really something that's, people that don't do this don't understand the level of refinement the body can go through.
Before, when I did it before, I always use this as an example. So I always think of it as like we sink and then we sort of round up to give ourselves some anchorage. And so like here, I would think that I would like press this down, my feet goes down, and now we're pushing forward. I would like hunker down and then this one here would go down. No?
No, I mean, this is all experience, right? Everything that we do is interpreting what we think it's supposed to be doing. Now, it has to be compatible with your motion. Maybe, at some point that might be right. At some point when the body changes, because that's what evolution is, and that's what you change, your rewiring of the movement, because everything that you learn is a habit. So if you do something over and over again, it becomes a habit. Is that habit the right habit? Or are you allowing your body to be open enough to change the habit that it thought was the correct habit? Then you have to alter that. So you can't be fixating on this, because when you have one dimension, when is it going to change to two dimensions? When you have two dimensions, when does it change to be a multi-dimension? Because if I go like this and go like this, go like this and go like this and go like this, that's the same open and close, but I added this and this came out. When I turn my hand, which finger is bent, which finger is straight, changes again. So depending on when you turn your thumb out like this, or you poke like this, or you point your finger, those are all levels of conscious intent, of motion. So when you change that, it changes the structure and integrity of your positions. So when you do this or you do this, did you do this and open and rise? Or to just open? So these are things that it's part of how you analyze your movement, and take the concept that we talk about and bring it into your motion. Sink the elbow, relax the shoulder. The geometry of position, the hoops, the squares, the triangles, the turning, the clockwise rotation, the counterclockwise rotation, the folding of the elbow and the relaxing of the wrist. These are all parts of the body that we know when we talk about them, but when does it happen and when does it tie together? So when we do these movements, even if we're here, we don't actually have to put too much downward strength in it. You don't have to do this. There's strength involved, but you have to tie it together so that the dimensional movements become part. So when we sink, when does that come down? When do you go like this and when do you pull back? It becomes a feeling in your motion and how smooth the strength when you push and you lift up. So, that's why there's interpretive movements, there's different stylistic difference based on how different teachers perceive it to be. Okay, do it again, go. Now when you sink your elbow, bring it back up. And sink your elbow and bring it out. So when she drops, she push out, drop, then that creates a dimensional force here. Then that becomes light. This becomes heavy. Right? Now let's do elbow up, lift, drop. So when it drops, 1, 2, so that creates one action. So free fall. Thrust. So you drop, you have to sink here, right? And then lift. And then sink. So in sinking, you hollow when you round. In extending, you straighten. So what happens in your spine? Your spine can round over. So this is strong, but what happens when you do this? You're still in that position. So you sink, you have to let go, and you have to sink again. So that's controlled by the body mechanics. It's controlled by your breath, because sinking your breath is part of dropping. Lifting is part of lifting your breath too. Right. So the breath and movement come into it. That's why we inhale and exhale. Lift up, sink, thrust. So, how does that play into your breathing? Well, every time you change your body's torso's space, you breathe. The only reason why you breathe is because, or allowed to breathe, is because your chest, the thorax area expands and it contracts. Your ribs go up and they go down. So when you change the volume, you change the amount of air you're taking in. And the air comes into your body through what? It's atmospheric pressure. When you open your orifice, the air comes in. Then it expands like a balloon. But when the air comes in, you expand inside and you control your torso while you're doing the breath and movement and the atmospheric pressure coming in. You're regulating where that breath goes. And it changes and influences how your body is moving. So that actually is what we're doing when we're doing. We're changing what's relaxed and what's tense. That action is actually tied to your breathing. So breathing is through your movement. Because all you're doing is controlling where you're opening and closing the orifice to let the air in. But we think breathing is sucking the air in, but it's really changing the shape of what happens to this area. So you can see why someone that's hyperventilating or stressed or tense can't breathe. Why? Because the breathing has become dysfunctional from the tension in the body, because it's not expanding and contracting when it's supposed to. It's kind of disconnected. So that's why breath and movement, when you breathe and you exhale, when you inhale and exhale, when you lift and you drop, all of this breathing that you're doing while you're doing a form is tying together what we call the breath and movement. So these things that we understand when we do these movements, that we're changing. So that's why we just have to work that as a relationship. So we have relationship right and left, upper and lower, internal and external. The internal movement and the external movement is the breath and motion. While we're moving, we create circulation. The breath comes in and it feeds the musculature, which is really the cells in your body. You know, how does that happen? It happens through your circulation. The red blood cells feeding the nutrients to your on a cellular level, and also to produce the energy that is required for muscle contraction. That's the physiology of the motion. So there's a lot to just moving your hand, and why you would get exhausted when your breath and movement is not coordinated or not working, in unison. That's what we call the upper breath and the lower breath not working together. Sang he, dip hop he, they don't connect. Upper breath and lower breath. So upper breath is up here, lower breath is here. So when we breathe, this expands and contracts and expands and contracts as one method of breathing. The other breathing is inhale, then it expands, and then you release. So you're controlling it from your stomach. So when you're doing this, your breathing form, you're breathing from your stomach. So, okay, we'll bow.
Huh? 3 days in sailing class, and it was 90% kung fu. It was not, I mean, like, in 2 ways.